The left-wing legacy media that has propped up Joe Biden for years has finally turned on the president. After his disastrous debate performance last week, the likes of CNN, MSNBC and the New York Times had no choice but to flip the switch and launch a revolt against Joe Biden. Sky News All Stars Rita Panahi, Murray and Kosha Gada take a look at the sudden and synchronised revolt by the media against Joe Biden. Legacy media outlets have propped up Joe Biden throughout his entire presidency. Hosts and journalists from CNN, MSNBC and the New York Times and many other influential mastheads have covered up Joe Biden's endless string of gaffes, mumbles and stumbles over the years. But not anymore. Joe Biden's disastrous performance at last week's debate was impossible to ignore, and so the orchestrated revolt against Joe Biden began. Explained Sky News All-Star Rita Panahi.
But here is our old Joe Scarborough, the MSNBC anchor, after the debate.
And now is a good time. In June, thank God. In June, and not October, in June. This is the last chance for Democrats to decide whether this man we've known and loved for a very long time is up to the task of running for president of the United States.
He wants to knife him, wants to replace him. It's hard to deny what people have just spent 90 minutes watching, a complete train wreck live on television.
And joining Scarborough's criticism of Biden was Joy Reid on MSNBC.
Post-debate, the very folk who are regularly featured on this segment for losing it on their various programs were waking up to the reality that Biden's cognitive decline could no longer be hidden from their audience. Here's one of those lefties losing it, MSNBC's Joy Reid.
I too was on the phone throughout much of the debate with Obama world people, with Democrats, with people who are political operatives, with campaign operatives. My phone really never stopped buzzing throughout. And the universal reaction was somewhere approaching panic. The people who were texting with me were very concerned about President Biden seeming extremely feeble, seeming extremely weak.
Even the moderator of the debate, CNN's Jake Tapper, has since turned on Biden.
A discernible pattern of Democratic officials seemingly trying to convince you, the public, to not believe what you saw and what you heard with your eyes and with your ears on Thursday night. Democratic officials have tried to spin this in many ways. They said President Biden just had a cold. They said it was just one off night, akin to when President Obama in 2012 was rusty and seemed a little huffy. But behind the scenes, make no mistake, most Democratic officials witnessed the same shocking spectacle that you did. The difficulty that the presumptive Democratic nominee, the current president of the United States, had just articulating his basic thoughts during the 90 minutes of the debate. With all due respect, it is not honest to say that this is just one night.
CNN also joined the revolt, slamming Biden's terrible performance.
It involves party strategists, it involves elected officials, it involves fundraisers. And they're having conversations about the president's performance, which they think was dismal, which they think will hurt other people down the party in the ticket. And they're having conversations about what they should do about it. Some of those conversations include, should we go to the White House and ask the president to step aside? Other of the conversations are about, should prominent Democrats go public with that call? Because they feel this debate was so terrible.
And MSNBC's Mika Brzezinski stumbled and mumbled in her editorial, finally conceding that Joe Biden needs to step aside. But not without a dig at Donald Trump first.
Now, our Joe, is off this morning on a planned vacation. On Friday's show, I should clarify, Joe said it may be time for Biden to consider stepping aside. He also said we should wait a few days to see how he responds. We're shoulder to shoulder on that. I do agree. Joe Biden has work to do. He has to do better. His team has to do a lot better. I'm just not ready, though, to count Joe Biden out, not even close. Just as Joe and I were stunned by the president's poor performance on the debate stage, we've also been surprised by the level of animosity toward Donald Trump from people who once supported him. The debate acted as a wake-up call that was a loss for Joe Biden, no question, but not a win for Trump. The choice is one terribly bad night versus a decade of destruction to our core beliefs, our democratic values, and yes, our Constitution. Someone who stumbled over his words for 90 minutes versus someone who lied to the American people over and over again. A man slowed down by a cold versus a man with a cold, vile, and merciless heart. I think in the days and weeks ahead, as we move away from this debate, clarity will hopefully set in. For me, Joe Biden is still the man for this moment.
Sky News All-Star Kristen Tate exposed the media's failed faux narrative about Joe Biden.
Yes, I mean, to your point earlier, though, it's kind of mind-blowing to me how shocked Democrat voters are about Biden's poor mental and physical state. I mean, every single week, you and I are talking about some new mortifying incident exposing the fact that he's basically been a houseplant for the last few years. But I guess, so many liberals, they just blindly believe whatever the media tells them. And the media and the Democrats, they thought that they could control reality by controlling the narrative. They do this with everything. They do this with the open border, which they tell us is secure. They do it with our cities, where they tell us crime is actually totally under control. And they were doing it with Joe Biden, telling us he's totally with it. He's the smartest guy in the room. Green John Peer gets up there at the podium and tells us, oh, he's never been sharper. But every once in a while, Chris, reality pokes through and exposes the truth. And in this case, it has completely shattered their faux narrative about Joe Biden. So now the entire establishment on the Democrat side is panicked and they don't know what to do.
Sky News All-Star Kosha Gada agrees, saying average voters are now seeing the true Joe Biden.
I think what happened last Friday, Danica, in this debate was a convergence of two big groups, convergence of the high information consumers of news and media who really knew this and it wasn't a surprise to them in terms of the cognitive decline of Biden, and this other group of just everyday people who aren't in the weeds, and for them, I think this was quite a shock. The dam has broken, and that's why all the smart money says that they are going to try and change him out. It's not so simple.
But not everyone has seen the light. There are still pockets of the media who are still clinging to Joe Biden for dear life. Despite acknowledging Joe Biden's failure immediately after the debate, Joy Reid has since come out and said she would rather have a wheelchair-bound Joe Biden in the White House than Donald Trump.
This election is no longer about the old guy that's in the White House now. All the op-ed pages and the New York Times can run around and opine about, what Joe Biden should do. And, y'all have fun with that. Enjoy yourselves, intellectual thought leaders. I no longer care. Doesn't matter to me anymore. It's above me now. It's above me now. There's a Waffle House next door. There's a Best Western next door as well. It's above me now. It's above Joe Biden now. Don't care about Joe Biden's age, infirmity, that he shuffled when he walked. I don't care. He could be seated for the rest of from now to election day and never get up off a chair. He could sit down. He could roll around in a wheelchair. He could be on a skateboard, seated. I don't care. Donald John Trump cannot be allowed back into the White House.
Supporters of Biden within the media tried to keep up the charade by putting his performance down to fatigue or a cold, mocked Sky News All-Star Carolyn DeRusso.
It was even interesting just watching some of the commentary on the debate, and some media commentators were like, oh, Biden looks a little tired today. And I'm like, really? Is that where you're still at? Not really being honest about this, but you know, the fact of the matter is, the truth is somewhere out there, and you should read and watch across all the media spectrum, because the truth is there somewhere in the middle.
And Joe Biden's own family is now doing their own censoring, trying to blame Biden's humiliating performance on campaign staff, which Sky News All-Star Paul Murray calls pathological.
Instead, amazingly, they are blaming not Joe Biden, not themselves for exposing Joe Biden, but the people around Joe Biden. They are, and I quote, privately trashing his top campaign advisors, blaming them for the president's flop on Thursday. What about them blaming themselves for exposing the weakness of their husband, father, or, if the kids are old enough, grandfather? They're also cracking into the CNN moderators. Remember, the CNN debate in the studio with the mics cut off in June was the Biden campaign's idea. Additionally, Biden's campaign staff are getting angry at CNN about how the debate was run, according to several people familiar with the conversations. Their complaints were lengthy, including that the moderators should have fact-checked Trump more often, that Biden was not told which camera he'd be on when not speaking, and that the makeup staff appeared to make him too pale. This is pathological gaslighting. And all of his problems will not get better. He will only get older, he will only get weaker, because that happens to all of us.